Hi guys, this is Iman Neo. Welcome to my channel. As you might know, in this series we are implementing a color switch game using Flutter and Flame game engine. And in today's episode, we are going to work with custom components, a sprite component, and in custom components we are going to draw some custom shapes. For example, a circular colored shape, which we are going to use in our game. So let's jump into the code. Okay, at first let's run the app to see what is the latest state of the app. Okay, as you remember, we have implemented the jump function, we have implemented the camera movement, and because here we don't have any other components in the world, you cannot realize the camera movement. But today we are going to add some components, and after that you can realize how camera moves through the game. At first, let me create a new branch for this episode. Episode 3. You might ask, what is this GCO? So it is a short form of git checkout-b. It is came from the bash interface that I'm using. It is My ZSH, and it is a bash interface. You can customize your theme, you can install plugins. For example, there are a lot of customized themes. For example, I use this one, and also there are a lot of plugins. Some of them are pre-installed. For example, Git is one of them that you have it by default. And for example, in Git plugin, you have a lot of aliases for your commands. For example, GA means git add, GAA means git add all, or for example, GG push means git push origin current branch, or GCO that I used is checkout. So you can use this plugin. It is really good. So let's get back to the code. Okay, so the first thing that we are gonna do to add a ground component to when you run the app, we need to add something here to not allow the player to jumps lower than that area, and we call that area our ground. At first we are going to draw a simple line, and after that we can add other shapes or images. So for example, we can say class ground extends a position component for sure, and it should have a required super dot position. Because it is required, we need to know the position of our ground. And for size, we can define a hard-coded value. For example, we can say 101. It draws only a line. And here in render method, let me do that with Control O to find the render method. Okay. And as you remember, this render method works like you need to use a relative positioning system instead of absolute positioning system, and everything starts at 0 and 0 in your component. So here we can say canvas.draw line maybe, or let us draw a rectangle because our position component has width and height. So here we are drawing a rect, and it can be from left up height and width and height. We can say 0 and 0 width and height with the paint of colors.red. For example, let me import the colors. Okay, now we need to add this ground to our word, and here, as you remember, in amount of our game, we can add components to the word, and we can say word.add, and our ground, it needs a, at first we need to import it, and it needs a position. So for the position, we can say x is 0, y is, for example, 400, and let's run the game. Okay, as you see, we have a ground here. Maybe it is not visible in the video. I will increase the height to, for example, 2. Okay, it is better. And one issue is that it is not in center. For example, if you have a 200 width line, as you see, it starts from the center to the right. To fix that, we can change the anchor to something like anchor.center. And if you run the app again, you see that it draws in the center of a screen, because Flame knows that our component should be grabbed from the center point, so it draws it in the center of the screen. Okay, so the next step is to prevent the player falls down below than the ground. To do that, we need to change the player logic. As you remember, we had an update method here, and our position is updated using velocity times dt. And here, at first, we need to have access to our ground object, for example, ground. And then we can have ground.position.y. So we can define an if statement to say if if this.position.y is more than ground.position. We can do something here. For example, okay, by the way, at first, let me introduce you a method which you can have access to other components inside your component. There are many ways to do that. For example, you can pass a reference here of the ground to have access to this object. But we are using another method here. It is, we can do this here, key. So each component has a key, and key is a component key. You can use component key.named to add a string here, and we can say, okay, this way everyone can have access to this object, this singleton object with this key. And by the way, you cannot define two ground with the same keys. It is a key which is unique in the game. So for example, let me define this key here, static const string, and we can say key name is equals to ground key, single ground key. And here we can use this key here, key name, and in our player to have access to the to find a component by key, we need to have access to our word class, because the word class is the root component of all elements, and it has access to other components. We can say we need to have our player which extends a position component with this mixin which has game ref, and we can say my game. So this mixin finds the type that you put here, which should be a game, through the parents and ancestors. So for example, here we have access to game ref, which is our game, and we can say game ref dot find by key, and here we can say ground dot key name. And okay, in this way we have access to the ground here, and yeah, we are pretty sure that it is not null because we are adding our ground before our player. And after that, when we when the player's y position is more than ground, we can say velocity should be 0. Let me, because it is final, we cannot modify it. Maybe we can call set values 0 and 0, and after that we reset the position to something like ground dot position minus size divided by 2. Okay, let me remove this one to show you what happens if we do this. Our player's position, which is defined by the center, will be exactly at the location of ground, which is a line. So we need to push the player a little bit up, which is size divided by 2, to move it on top of the ground. So to do that, I will say position minus size divided by 2, and we can put this logic here in the else branch. And if we run the game, okay, something funny is happening here. What if we say position of anchor bottom center? Okay, so the issue is that our player's position, as I said, is calculated using a center point of that circle. So we need to calculate the bottom of our player not passing the ground line. So to do that, we have a method which is position of anchor, and here we can pass a customized anchor to retrieve the position of that point. For example, we can say bottom center of player dot y, and in this case we have this effect. And by the way, in the position ground dot position minus, okay, we need to just calculate the y here. So because we need to have a consistent x which is in center of a screen, so we can say vector 2 x is 0 but y is ground dot position dot y minus size dot, or maybe height divided by 2. Okay, this is working well now. So the next step is to add our circle component, which is turning around, and it has different section of colors. And at first, let me commit this code here. Add ground object to not the player, move load. Okay, now we need to add a new component for our circle component. Maybe we can call it circle rotator. Dart, and it can be a class circle rotator which extends a position component again, and here we need to maybe have width and height or size. If we implement it here like this, super dot size, we need position, super dot position, and we can make both of them required, and anchor is center. Okay, I think it is enough, or maybe we can have thickness for the stroke line that the circle should be drawn. We can have a custom variable final, a double thickness maybe, and we can have a default value for that, which is 8, for example. And okay, we can say distort thickness. In the render method, we are going to, at first, let us draw a simple circle. Draw circle. Offset is the center. We can say 0 and 0 maybe. Offset at 0. Or radius is size dot shortest. Do we have something like that? Okay, we are pretty sure that maybe we can do an assertion here. Assert. I think we need to put it here. Assert that size.x equals to size.y. Okay, we add this assertion to make sure that x and y is the same because it is a circle shape. And here we can say, for example, size.x divided by 2 to have the radius, and we can have a paint color of blue accent. And if we run the app again, I think nothing happens because we didn't add it to the game, to the word. So we are going to, oh sorry, my game. We are going to have a function called add circle component, or add game or maybe generate game component. And here we can say word dot add a circle rotator with the position of vector 2, 0 and for example 300 on top, and size should be a vector 2 of 200 on 200, and thickness is a default value. So if we run the app, okay, as you see we have a big circle. At first let me change the style here, which is paint style.stroke, for example, and we can say stroke width is our thickness. Okay, and what if it is not drawing in the center? Oh, I know, because we need to we don't want to it drawn from top left of the component. You know, if we turn on the debug mode, update mount debug mode equals true, the box is here, which is correct, but we need to add an offset here. Offset is size divide by 2, and we change it to offset. Okay, this is the correct version, and there is a problem. For example, if we increase it to something like 440, as you see, it draws outside of the box. So we need to fix the issue. To do that, we need here is our radius, is this one, and we can say radius minus I think thickness divided by 2. And if you run the app again, okay, it is now working well. Let's put it back to 8, and we need to turn off the debug mode, and also we need to move the circle a little bit further. For example, position 0 and 300, we can say 0 and 600 maybe. Oh, it is too far, I think. 500. Oh, it goes down. We can do the minus here. Minus 200. It is too far. Maybe we need to add a 0 and 0. Okay, it's good. And maybe we can have 100. Yeah, why not? And okay, we have a circle component, and in the next step we are going to add different color in different sides of this circle. So let me define the colors in our game, and we can have a list of colors, game, or maybe array game colors, and it is a final list, and you can define it like this dot game colors, and as a default list we can say colors dot red accent, colors dot green accent, colors dot blue, and colors dot yellow. Yes, I think maybe we can change the green with pink, or purple. No, green is better. Okay, you can define any type of colors that you want, and it is like this. So in our circle rotator, we can have access to the game with has game ref, and here we can say my game. And okay, so to draw different part of a circle, we have a method called draw arc, I think. And in draw arc, let me comment this section. You give a rectangle which you want to draw this arc in that. We can say we want to have a rectangle which is maybe our size to rect. Okay, and a start angle, for example 0, sweep angle 0.3, use center false. I will let you know what is this, and we can say paint colors dot red accent, for example. By the way, it is not good to define a new paint in every frame, so it's better to cache your paint. We will do that in the final episodes or something like that. And here, if we run the app again, yeah, as you see, we have something here. Maybe we can increase this like 5, and I think, okay, so if we do this, I think it draws half of circle. We need to change the stroke, change the type. Sorry, what was that? The style. We can say paint style dot stroke, and if we run again, yeah, it is working. And also we need our stroke width, which is thickness. Okay, and if we set use center to true, you will see that it renders another line inside the circle, so we don't want it. We can say it to false. And the other thing that we need to maybe we can have different components for different side of our circle. For example, we can define a class which is circle arc. Maybe it's a position component, and here we can so size should be the same size of parent. We have a mix in here. We can say with has parent, or parent is a circle rotator. So in this way, we force this component to have the parent that we declare here. So no one can add this component as a child except this one. So here we have access to the parent because we force that the parent should be a circle rotator. And in unmount, we can say that size is equals to parent dot size. We can say that position is equals to parent dot position. And yeah, in the draw, and we need to add some parameters here. For example, we can set color. We can set these two variables, start angle and sweep angle. And I think it is enough. And yeah, all of them are required. And here in unmount, we do not want to do anything more. I'm going to define a render method here which draws an arc, and rect is the same that we had here, and radius, we want to grab this one here. Oh, I think we don't have radius anymore here. By the way, we have a start angle, we have sweep angle, use center is false, and paint is something with color of, oh, let me copy paste this part of code, and color is color, and thickness is parent dot thickness. And if we run the app, oh, we need to do something here. So instead of drawing them directly, we are going to add these 4 components inside the circle rotator. We are going to do that in unmount because onRender is calling every frame. So we are not going to add 4 components every frame. We are going to add them once. Maybe we can do it in unload. We can say that it is a void method. Okay. And we can say add all, or maybe let me add 1 sample, and after that we can think how to add all. So here we have, okay, I have an idea. We can have access to the list of colors, and we have game ref here. Okay, what was that? Oh, because here we have error, it does not suggest it. We have game colors and lengths. So we need to add circle arcs with count of lengths. So for example, we can say for int I equals 0, or 0 I to length -1 I plus plus. And in this way we are going to add a circle arc. Okay, color is this, and the start angle is 0 and sweep angle is 0. So to define these variables, we need to know that at first it works with let me show you draw arc. It works with radians, so you are not working with degrees here. It is a radians variable. Let me remove this, and here we have math. Let me import a math here. Dart, and here we can say math.pi times 2. This value is a full radians of a circle. So for example, we can say and okay, and we can say final, or const sweep is this one, circle divided by this length. Okay, so in this way we are dividing a circle to the areas that we are going to have some parts, some different colored parts. And here we can say I times sweep of start equals this one, and sweep is always sweep. I think this should work. So at first we have 0 and sweep, and after that we have sweep times 1 and sweep, and after that we have sweep times 2 and sweep, and sweep is our full circle divided by a count of our game colors. So let's run the app to see. Okay, we have an uncompleted circle here. Oh, I see. We should not do a -1 here because we say lower that. Okay, so now we have a circle rotator which is not rotating yet. We just added different parts. So let me increase this value to something like 40 and do the debug mode again. Okay, as you see, the issue exists, and oh, at first we need to change the anchor here. Yeah. Okay, there is an issue still. Oh, we should say position is 0 and 0, I think. Okay, we need to say position is size minus divided by 2. Yes, because child position is works like a relative positioning system. And yeah, here we should say size divided by 2. And in the next step, we need to fix the stroke issues that are drawn outside of the components box. So we can say to rect what we have here, deflate. I think what deflate does, yes, it says it moves the edges inside or inwards. Let me try this with thickness, and if we run the app again, okay, we need to divide the thickness by 2. Now it draws inside the area that the component has. So great, let me put it back to 8 again, and we can remove the debug mode. Okay, now we have our circle rotator, and also we need to change the starting point of the player, because it starts on top of the circle. We can say player, what is the position? Okay, it is 0 by 0, but we are going to define it here, super.position, which is required. So our game should decide where the player is. Position is a vector of 0 and maybe 300. Okay, or maybe 200, or maybe 250. Okay, and the next step, let me commit the code here. Commit -n, add different colors, add circle to different colors, only drawing out. Next step is to rotating the circle rotator, as its name suggests. So let's clean up this code, and we don't need the render anymore, because childs are rendering the different parts of the circle, and we are going to implement the update method. And in update method, we have something like angle. I think we can decrease it by, for example, a value every frame. So if you run the app, you see that it is rotating. For example, you can decrease it like this, and yeah, it is working. Okay. Yeah, as you see, camera is working because we have some components. You can check the camera movement. By the way, there is another way to rotate a component, which is simpler. Let me open the Flame game engine. In docs, we have effects. So effects are another components that you can add them to a component to do something for the parent. For example, you can add a rotation effect to your component, and it rotates your component as a child. So it has access to the parent properties, and it can update the parent behavior. Okay, so we are going to remove this line, and it is not rotating, and we can add a rotate effect dot 2, and in angle we can say math.position pi times 2, which is a complete rotation. We need to pass an effect controller here. We can say we can define the speed here. For example, we can say 1 to see what happens. And let's run the game. Okay, as you see, it rotates 1 time and it stops. So to do that, to fix that, we can define there is an infinite variable. We can set it to true, and yes, I think it should be rotating infinitely with a speed of, for example, 8. Okay, so this is more simpler and effective way of rotating a component. We are going to add a rotation speed here, because sometimes we need to add a speed to the game, a speed to the rotation of circles in the game. And we can say rotation speed, which is 2 by default. I think it is enough. And when you run the app again, yeah, it is something that works. Okay, I will clean up the code a little. Add rotation effect to the circle rotator. Okay, the next step is to add an image here instead of having this red line. So let me find an image. We need to add a finger image on the bottom of as a ground in our game. So let me search in icon finder. I think we can find some free icons here. Free. Oh, not this one. I think this one is good. You know, it says that you need to tap, and I will download it in, I think, oh, let's get 500 size. Okay, I will put it inside the, oh, not a module, but directory. Assets, images, and here we say finger tap. And as you remember, Flame has a suggestion for file structure. It is like assets, image, and also we need to add this. Assets, images. I think it should work. And by the way, we have a component which is a sprite component. Oh, components. Okay, and a sprite component is a component to draw an image. So in the game world or game cosmos, you have a concept of a sprite, and it is because we have something like a sprite sheet also. So for example, here this is a sprite sheet. For example, you have 16 type of images, and you can animate between them. So each of them is a sprite. So a sprite concept is nothing more than an image. But in sprite sheets, you have an image with different types of the player movement or any other things. And also in the Flame game, we have a sprite sheet component, I think, or a sprite animation component. You can define different sprites sheet. Yes, if you have a sprite sheet, you can use the sequence and it has an sprite animation and something like that. So we only need to use a sprite component here. Okay, it works like this. And let me copy paste it here in our ground. In our ground, I'm going to copy paste some codes here. Okay, at first we need to load the sprite. So in unload, we say that we need a future of void. And at first we need for the backend, for the super unload, and after that we load the player, which is finger tap play PNG, and we have sprite. We can do two different things. At first we can add another component here. We can say we need to have this sprite component in the add method, and we can pass this here. If you run the game, I see nothing. Vector 2 of 100 and 100. Okay, so that's because size is 1 and 100. Sorry, 2 and 202, and it is not enough to draw an image. So we are going to resize it to something like 100 and 100. So the first way is doing this, adding another component, which is a sprite component, to show the image. The other way is to calling finger sprite dot render, and in the render, in the render, you are going to pass the canvas, and it renders it in a large size. For example, you can decrease it by size is, for example, vector 2 or 100 and 100. Yeah, I'm going to continue with this way, but also you can add another component, child component, which is a sprite component, and you give your sprite, and done. It renders the sprite. So I'm going to use a simpler way, just rendering our sprite. And yes, I think 120 is better. No, 100 is good. Okay, now we need to move the sprite image a little bit further to match with the bottom of our player. So to do that, we have a position which I think is 0 and 0 by default. Let me check it. Yes, we need to change the width to something like 10, 40, 50, 60, a little bit lower value. Okay. I think 58 is better. 56, 55, 56. Yes, it's good. So now we can remove the red line. Yeah, this is our game, and you can go up, and we have a sprite component here. We have our circles that are rotating, and I think we are done for this episode. Just let me commit our changes to this branch. Add a finger tap image instead of a red line in the ground position. Okay, now we finished this episode. We implemented a circle with different colors, and after that we implemented a logic to rotate these, and then we added a visualize icon as a ground to not allow the player to move below the ground. So in the next episode we are going to implement a logic for going through the circle. I mean, if your color matches with the color that you are going through, it's okay. Otherwise, you lose. You for example, if your color is yellow and you contact with a blue line, this is not allowed, and you are gonna lose. So stay tuned for the next video. If you like this video or this series, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe my channel. And stay tuned for the next video. Bye bye.